I'm Nick Hernandez, and you're listening to the Positivity Matters podcast. On this show, we talk all things well being, research, theorizing, culture building around well being, and everything you can imagine. Today, I'm happy to have as my guest on the program UNMC's interim chancellor, Dele Davies. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Nick. Nice to be with you.
We met at the talk by former Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy. Dr. Murthy and Dele were in conversation about loneliness, togetherness, community, service. It was a fascinating conversation and it blew by. I think you probably had the whole audience in the flow, in the zone. It was not long enough. And afterwards, I was speaking with Dr. Tim Hodges, director of the Clifton Strengths Institute and former guest on the Positivity Matters podcast. And you'd walked up, and a strengths conversation ensued, and talk of emotional intelligence, and it was just a delightful evening of many things that really seemed to matter a lot. What was that event like for you? And then what does a chancellor do?
Well, first of all, Nick, thank you, and a great honor to be on your show. Yes, I remember very well meeting you that day, and I remember the conversation we had. It was very rich, and I know that I stayed longer than I expected because we had a lot of things to talk about. I think Dr. Berthy's talk and the interview that I had the honor of doing with him, I think just resonated with a lot of people because he captured the essence of what a lot of people understand, how loneliness is at an epidemic. And I think loneliness is something that had not even been on the radar of most people until Dr. Murthy brought it to the fore. And I think the essence of loneliness is the loss of connectedness, the fact that we're no longer able to relate to people and to build each other up as we should be as human beings and humanity. And so loneliness is not just being away from other people. You could be in a room full of people and still be lonely if you're not having that sense of connectedness. And I think we talked about a lot of things about how um, a lot of contributing factors to loneliness, which include things like social media, isolation that occurs in relation to that, the loss and breakdown of our ability to build community, not having a community of people we can lean on and trust and help support one another during moments of transition. It could be transition for good things like weddings and exciting things, or bad things like loss of loved ones. So it's really, I think it was really an opportunity for me and for all of us in the audience to ask the question, what are we doing to connect with other people? And how are we helping to reduce that epidemic of loneliness, which ironically is actually more amongst our younger generation?
Yeah, I think he shared maybe even that one of the stories that he heard while I believe he said at Northeast High School was one that's traveled the world. Someone sharing their experience, so that's kind of consciousness raising that's on the road from Lincoln, Nebraska. I believe a great series this semester. There was a young man who had set up a table with kind of a lemonade stand table, except it just said "here to listen." And he was the next speaker in the series, and Orly Israel. He was a delight to hear, and he's a amateur listener, but
I
he's a
love
pro.
that. That what a great
Yeah,
thing to do. Here to listen. Love it.
yeah. What does the chancellor do?
Yeah, I have the privilege of leading one of our great universities in Nebraska, the University of Nebraska Medical Center. We are a university that has basically four missions. We train the next generation of healthcare professionals for the state of Nebraska and beyond. We conduct world-class cutting-edge research. We help to take care of patients and provide the highest quality care possible for Nebraskans and beyond. And also we serve the communities that we live in. And as a result of that, we provide economic impact because a lot of our service is not just in kind, We serve on boards. We serve, helping take care of the neighborhoods we live in. We also help build um, institutes that help provide all kinds of structure and support for the communities we live in. So, University of Nebraska Medical Center is, you know, uh, we are closely aligned with the rest of the university system. As you know, we have the University of Nebraska system includes University of Nebraska Lincoln, University of Nebraska Omaha, University of Nebraska Kearney, and the University of Nebraska Medical Center. Now, it's interesting that we are the health sciences medical center. So we have a College of Medicine, dentistry, nursing, pharmacy, public health, and allied health professions. And we also have graduate studies. And then we have two institutes that basically focus on persons who have developmental disabilities and persons with cancer. And then actually we have a third one now also that focuses on children, the Child Health Research Institute. So what sets us apart is everything we do is focused on health, either research, clinical, education. It's all focused on health and well-being. And our campus is the 500-mile wide radius of Nebraska. So we're located in Omaha, we're located in Lincoln, we're located in Kearney, we're located in Norfolk, and we're located in Scottsbluff and Gering. And in all those communities, we have students and faculty who work there, learn there. But each of those communities are all unified under University of Nebraska Medical Center. So, we don't have five different colleges of nursing. We have one college of nursing with campuses across the state. We are the largest healthcare workforce provider to the state of Nebraska. The majority of all the healthcare professionals who are trained in this state are our graduates. And we're very proud of that. And we know that obviously the state needs a lot more healthcare workers, and we continue to go across the state and listen and learn, and we continue to grow to make sure that we help meet that need.
Beautiful. I'm guessing that's a pretty exciting job to wake up to every day. That's
It is. What excites me, Nick, is really the men and women that I work with every day. We have an incredible team of leaders. We have an incredible team of faculty, staff. Our students are really energetic. I learn from them every day. And I think, it's just the atmosphere is very energizing. And there's no other place I would rather be working.
you were sharing with me a little bit of what may help to be creating some of that energy. You're telling me about colors, and I'll let you describe it because you actually use it to build teams. So if you
Well,
wouldn't,
we are all a component of different types of people who we all have different things we prefer in how we relate to other people and how we engage and how we think. And everybody has their own unique and very clear lanes that they prefer to be in. So there's a tool called HBDI, the Herman Brain Dominance Instrument. It's a way of trying to figure out how it's a psychological tool similar to Clifton Strengths and many other types of inventories. But I like this along with the other tools because it's a very simple one. It's easy to understand, and I have used it and find it very um, easy to understand, and my team find it easy to understand. So they're basically, four dominant colors in HBDI. So it's really think about it as each one of these colors represent how people prefer to think. And so people who are yellow color, they are usually the people who are visionaries, they are intuitive, they like to take risk, they are they think outside the box, they are imaginative, curious, artistic. The people who are blue are more intellectual, logical, analytical. They like to solve problems. They are technical, they're factual, they're critical, they're rational. People who are green are, those are, okay, so let me start to put some people in some of these boxes. So, I would think that some of the yellows might be the people who are your imaginative playwriters and people who are your visionaries for trying to help you see the future a different way. The blues will be a lot of your scientists and your, people who are more technical. And then there are the people who are more green. They're what I would say conservative, traditional. They like to keep things safe. They're detailed. They're people we really need. They're organized. And they're the ones who, while you're thinking and saying something, they're already thinking of how they're going to solve it. They're just planners. They're your planners and your administrators. They're the people who are red. These are the people who are your spiritual, emotional, symbolic people who are usually the friendly ones. They're the ones you want managing your front office desk if you have one, and you're the ones you want answering your phones if you're a business because they can relate to people. They are talkers, your teachers, they're very expressive. Now, why are these colors important? Well, think about a table with four legs. That table is only as stable as each of those four legs. And if you're missing one of those four legs, you're not a stable table. And so if you, for example, are somebody who's mostly, yellow, in other words, you're somebody who has a lot of visions and ideas, and you're constantly throwing out ideas and throwing out, ways of doing things, but you're not able to get things done, then you have a problem, right? We need those people who are visionary, right? But you also need them to be able to partner with people who can get things done.
Hmm.
On the other hand, if you're somebody who is blue and you're always analytical and you're thinking, you're logical, then again, you may be somebody who, you might have heard of analysis paralysis, right? You can overanalyze to the point of just, procrastination. But you need that those analytical people are really, really critical, right? To make sure that things get done and that things that, you're not jumping and making mistakes. And then you have the greens who are the logical, organized, the people who never go through a red light because it would be breaking a rule, no matter whether there's anybody coming and waiting for a long period of time. And then you have the reds who, as I said, they're the most emotional, spiritual, symbolic. Now, if you are a leadership in a leadership role like I am, I need all of these people. There's no one role that's more important or less important. I need all of these people. I need people who can read the emotions of the room. I need people who have visionaries and can help sort of conceptualize big ideas. I need people who can analyze those big ideas, and then I need people who can get things done, who are detail oriented. And so for me, a big part of my leadership is every time I get into a role, I make sure that I analyze the skills of all the people around me. And if there's a gap, I work hard to fill that gap. In other words, if I don't have anybody who's red on my team, then I ask the question, how could I find such a person? Because I need them. And if I have somebody, if I can get people who can get things done and everybody just throwing out ideas and nobody's actually able to make it happen, then that's a problem too. So this is a really cool thing. And actually, let me just add one more thing, Nick. Think about somebody who's a visionary, somebody who's throwing out ideas all the time, right? And if you're somebody who's a green, somebody who just knows how to implement and get things done, if you don't understand each other and explain what's going on, the person who is green can get really, really frustrated because they'll say, I don't understand Tony because every time I go into Tony's office, they're always throwing out ideas. They always want me to do these things. Then I get it done and they come back and they change their mind because they don't always understand that the people who are yellow are always brainstorming, but they're not necessarily saying do it, right? And if you're green, what you're hearing is do it. And so it can be really, really frustrating if you're an accountant or an engineer and you're listening to somebody who's talking about 10 different things and they come back, they talk about 10 other different things, and you say, come on, let's just make a decision and move on. On the other hand, if you're somebody who is a red and emotional and somebody who's more thought, more connected to people's ways of what may be going on in their lives. And you're working in a role-based organization, you might be frustrated and say, this organization doesn't care about people because they have these rigid rules that they're never going to change and can they see that this person is hurting and do something about it? So we really need all these people on our team. And I find it really, really useful to really build a team that helps complete and make sure we're not missing out on any aspect of having a successful and vibrant organization.
I love that. That's cool. And then I'm guessing that's kind of like big picture, then maybe like uh the individual psychological strengths might help understand the nuance of how that person inhabits that role or something like that. But you shared that on your Clifton strengths, you had significance, futuristic, individualization, focus, maximizer, strategic, learner, achiever, responsibility, and belief.
Hmm.
Do a couple of those sort of jump out for you as kind of preeminent in the role that strengths work their way in through what you do?
Well, I think that significance is really important. For me, it's really, I really believe in being a part of something that's greater than I am, that I'm, helping to be part of, something that um, can really, you know, change the world, so to speak. I want to make sure that I'm doing things that are important and not about me, but really helping to elevate others and prioritizing, people and projects based on how they will raise the bar for everybody. So significance is a really big one for me. But I'm also somebody who's very visionary. A big part of my strengths is just being able to see the future, I think, clearer than a lot of people can. And also having a sense of how I can help inspire people to see that future along with me and lead them and get them to come alongside and come into that future. And it's something that I would say those are the two ones that I really find um, very powerful as far as my strengths are.
I like it. And then you got the maximizer that just amplifies those two.
Hmm. Yes.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing about the various uh, ways in which being mindful of the psychological dispositions of people can play out in an organization. I'm guessing that probably awareness of those dynamics probably matters more the deeper one gets into leadership. So that's I'm I haven't I'm picturing this. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing about that. Um we were talking about emotional intelligence, and you were sharing that you've done some workshops on this topic, and I am curious about what is emotional intelligence, and how did you get interested in that? What is it like to teach on that topic?
Well,
And
it's
anything
a
else you'd like to share about that?
sure. It's really fascinating, Nick. I would say that about maybe 10 years ago, I mean, I knew what emotional intelligence was, but I was not really, into it that much. And what happened was I got a phone call. I I got a phone call from a physician who was one of my former medical students and then became one of my residents. And then he's now one of my colleagues here at UMC. And he picked up the phone and said, Dr. Davies, I would like you to come talk to the leaders, aspiring leaders in this program that I'm putting together. And I said, sure, I'd love to do that. And I said, what's the topic? He said, emotional intelligence. And I said, emotional intelligence? I said, yes. I said, well, I don't know. I don't understand why you would ask me to talk about emotional intelligence. And he was very kind. And he said, Dr. Davis, I've known you for years, and you're one of the people who I found to exhibit a high level of emotional intelligence, and then proceeded to tell me a few examples of scenarios that he'd seen me in, particularly one that included his best friend, whose son had been admitted to hospital, was quite ill. And unbeknownst to me, I was the doctor who had been called in to that family to help take care of that child. And I basically walked into that room, and I remember that family very well. And he said, up till the time I showed up, there were a lot of angst and concerns, and nobody seemed to be listening. So when you showed up, Dr. Davies, you sat down, you listened, you heard them, and you were able to allay their concerns. He took care of that patient, and that boy is doing really well. And he said, that's my best friend. And I said, wow. I mean, so from that point, I thought, okay, that's something that I cannot ignore. So what I then did was started to learn about emotional intelligence, read a lot of books. And then when I did my presentation to this group, I found that they were really, really energized. They were all they received it really well. They invited me back and they told their friends and their friends told others. And I started getting invited to talk about emotional intelligence, including at the Harvard School of Public Health and other places around, the state and the country. And so that's how I got into it. So what is emotional intelligence? Well, it's really the ability to understand and manage not only your own emotions and those of others, but also how you handle relationships, meaningful relationships, not just in your own personal life, but in your workplace, in your with your neighbors. It's really a learned capacity that can result in, it's very critical in terms of how you show up to work every day. And everybody knows about, your IQ, but the reality is that your EQ, your emotional quotient, is a lot more important for your success in life, a lot more. And I think, many people don't realize that 70% or more of your success in life is not your IQ, it's your EQ, your emotional intelligence. And so basically it's really understanding that, you and how you bring yourself to your relationships and to work every day makes a difference in everything. So there are basically four parts to emotional intelligence. The first is self-awareness. Is that your ability to identify your own emotions and how they impact others? And then once you identify those emotions, then the next stage is self-management. How do you manage those actions, thoughts, and feelings in ways that can get the desired results? And then the next thing is that how aware of you socially to notice the emotions of others and read their their situations appropriately. That would be the empathy, being able to step in the shoes of other people. And then once you've been able to do that, how do you take your emotions and the emotions of others and manage your social interactions successfully? So that's what emotional intelligence is. And it's really, really, I can't overstress that it's very, very important. And 95% of people think that they are self-aware, but only 10 to 15% are. And so it's really just a matter of, understanding how you bring yourself to work every day, to your family, to your spouse, to your friends, and understanding how to know how your own emotions can spread. It's like a virus. Your emotions can spread to other people. And if you're not aware of that, you may be very, very upset from something that happened at work. And you can actually take it back home and make, your poor spouse who's just minding, trying to say, how was your day? You can unload on them, right? And vice versa. You can bring your emotions to work every day and it can impact how even the very best workers, right, are able to perform because you've really, tainted their day. So, as I said, 2 out of 3 of the abilities that distinguish the best performers in any job is not their IQ, is their emotional competence. And compared to IQ and expertise, emotional intelligence is twice as important. And I will actually say one more thing. 70%, 50 to 70% of how employees perceive the climate in which they work every day can be traced back to the emotions and actions of their leader. 70%. So this is really, really an important area. And I've been just you know, excited to dig into this. There's a saying, no one wants to work for a grouch, right? That's really the key here. Okay, I'll stop and see if you have any questions.
That is that is a that is a beautiful construct. How was the label for the fourth category? What was that one again?
Sorry, the label for the fourth category?
Yeah, it was self awareness, self management, reading others with empathy, and then
Yeah,
um,
so the first, so you're talking about the 4 stages of
yeah,
the
four
four,
stages.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it would be self-awareness, right? Self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So self-awareness starts identifying your own emotions and recognizing how they impact others. Self-management, managing your actions and your thoughts and your feelings in ways that get desired results, right? Because, if you don't manage that, you can do a lot of things that are actually against your self-interest. Your social awareness is just ability to notice the emotions of others around you and read the room. So you might, for example, let me give you very concrete examples, Nick. You may remember some incredible scenarios where there was a big oil spill and, a lot of people were concerned about what it meant for their lives, their livelihood. And the CEO of the company involved talked about wanting to go back and get his life back, right? Not understanding and empathetically reading the emotions of the people and how angry and upset they were. And that was not in his best interest. I think that cost him his job, right? And I think it's really the understanding that you have to be able to walk into a room and or listen or relate to people and understanding how they're feeling and be able to respond accordingly. That's the social awareness. And then the relationship management is taking your own emotions, and the emotions of others and the context in which they're occurring. So you can actually successfully manage your social engagement with them.
I have been an appreciator of theories of emotion, emotion research, and there's several things that come to mind there. One, I think on one end of the spectrum empirically, there's one school of thought that emotions are entirely constructed top to bottom. The other school, oh no, there's some, primary mechanisms and sort of certain basic emotions uh, on the empirical side. And then there's this philosophical voice that says, well, at the center of the significance of what is an emotion, the essence of it is that it's an evaluative judgment. I kind of picture that as like we have a worldview of like our beliefs about how the world works, our values, what we believe kind of should happen. And then comparing like our actions with that worldview or comparing the actions of others with that worldview, you kind of get like, oh, this is like aligned with that or this is disaligned with that. And then something emerges maybe that's it's a it's at the essence yeah, that evaluative judgment, but it's experienced in an embodied way, and almost immediately you're feeling the feels, and maybe there's a strategy developing um, without even really having to consciously think about it a whole lot. But when you pause, maybe there's, oh yeah, there is, yeah. So I think on the upside, it's like just ride the wave of positive emotions, like surf that well, pleasure, flow, like keep growing. And then on the negative side, I think if it doesn't quite make sense why you might be experiencing negative emotion, maybe it's maybe you have some, maybe you've adopted some values and absorbed them from the culture that if you were to state them consciously, you might not want to endorse them, or maybe you do. But that basically, like both well, all emotions basically are just ways of you're letting yourself know like what your values are, I guess would be, you could trace it that way. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of my double take on emotion, a little bit empirical, a little bit philosophical. Does any of that even matter? Sure.
Yeah, it does because well, it does because your emotions are a combination of your prior experiences and also your current situation. And I think it's important to understand that emotions are fueled by a part of the brain, your limbic system that, can be either turned on or off based on your own will. And so part of what you need to understand is what you allow into your mind, your brain can influence your emotions significantly. And then if that influence occurs, you need to figure out what you do with it. And and that's a habit you have to develop because there's a part of your brain that wants to respond very quickly, sort of what I would call the knee-jerk way. And what you have to do is try to turn on the part of the brain that suppresses that urge. So there's one part that wants to suppress and one part that wants to turn on. And you have to learn to hand make sure you turn on the part that wants to suppress because you want to be careful that you're not yelling, screaming, punching every time somebody upsets you. And so part of that is just understanding that there will be things that will do that, that will make you feel the urge to do that. And then learning to be self-aware, that's the whole self-aware component. And then you can then avoid situations. For example, I always urge people to maybe limit their dose of talk shows where the talk show hosts are very, they have opinions and they yell and scream and they're making their whole desire to get you all excited. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch it, but limit the dose, control the dosage so that you don't just show up at work upset and you don't even know why you're upset, right? You're not even sure why. It doesn't even occur to you. The way you just fed your mind the last hour is actually contributing to your anger and your dissatisfaction. And also, how are you going to then be making sure that you're not bringing your own experiences and your current circumstances to others in a way that's negative and making sure that you can actually be uplifting? So absolutely. So you're absolutely right that you've got to be mindful about you know, how your own prior experiences can be a trigger for something that could not be good. If you've had your home broken into, maybe, or if you've had something negative happen to you, when you perceive that something that resembles that may be going on, even if it's not the case, you may actually react in a very negative way. So it's really just being self-aware of what might be driving you to do what you're doing and thinking the way you're thinking.
I think I'm one of those idea people that you spoke about. So you got the ideas going.
Which is good.
One of them was like, how might that affect your worldview? Like, if your home gets broken into on the negative side. On the positive side, I've heard that there's a sort of a upside to ACEs or adverse childhood experiences, PACEs, positive childhood experiences. And one that I think in particular jumped out was mentoring. And I was thinking about that a little bit. It's like, what does a mentor represent? I think it's something like as or youth mentoring in particular. I think as a young person, you're like, my parents have to keep me alive. My teacher has to get me to learn. And then like the mentor, you know, the mentor could be like, okay, I know these adults are taking those jobs on. Great. And you can kind of specialize and like, what are you interested in, young person? What are your strengths? And it gets like a strengths based mindset going, that I think then sort of naturally extends out into, I wonder how the neighborhood is for this young person. Like, what kind of world are they inhabiting? Maybe I can do something there as well. And then since they've had sort of that training on the strengths focus, it might translate into like an asset based community development kind of mindset. Um, so that is like the opposite of having your home broken into in a negative way. It's maybe having your heart broken into in a positive way. And then for the mentor, for the community, there's you mentioned the idea of dosage, like for a talk show. And I'm wondering, I think I've heard a dosage for volunteerism maybe suggested between an hour to four a week, with maybe the hour on the younger side, and then maybe towards retirement, maybe moving up towards closer to the 4 hour mark or something along those lines. My own tweak on the prescription might be, if possible, if you can have youth mentoring as a part of it, plus something to where you're helping someone else notice their strengths. And then for yourself, like maybe another hour would be something where you're really mindful of your color and your strengths, and like what can you bring into service, and maybe there's something that's already exists that sort of fits that well, or maybe there's a little bit of creativity involved in bringing one's strengths into service. But that's you said dosage, and then I thought of the reverse of the negative thing. So
No,
that's
absolutely,
what
Nick.
came to mind.
You are so correct in that, you can take two young kids who have similar backgrounds, raised by similar types of families in the similar neighborhoods, and one of them turns out really, really bad. And I don't mean that with any negativity on their part, but things don't go well for them. And another one just turns out great. And you ask the question, even sometimes within the same family, Nick, you ask the question, what was the difference? Now, there are a lot of factors that can contribute to that. Some of it is just your current, some people just have different types of dispositions, and some kids are just built to be more resilient and more able to sort of overcome. On the other hand, one of the biggest factors that have been shown to make a difference is the presence of positive role models. Absolutely. The presence of somebody you can say, I see you, can take them under their wing, be a role model, be a mentor that you mentioned. I've been a member of the board of the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Midlands for years. I'm a member of the 100 Black Men Club here in Omaha. And both of those things have one thing in common. Mentoring is a really, really big part of both organizations. And what they see is what they will be. And I think just thinking through how, you can actually transform the trajectory of somebody's life by being a positive role model and by being a mentor and helping guide them and giving them positive affirmation that yes, you can do this. You can get to where you need to be. And so I think you're absolutely correct that, we can help influence the trajectory of people's lives by serving, by giving back, and but more importantly, by being there and coming alongside kids who may not see any hope in life for themselves. And they see you come alongside and they feel valued and can make a big difference in their trajectory.
Yeah, I think that it's something like, it's sort of like maybe a little bit of evidence, like, hey, the world's a good place. Look, there's like a person that's not, they don't they don't have to keep me alive. They don't have to try to make me learn. Like,
Mhm.
the community cares.
Mhm.
Uh yeah, yeah. I've heard one of the child that doesn't feel welcomed by the community may burn it down to feel the warmth. Something along those lines.
Well, so there's a saying from a local leader here who says, for those who have no hope, for those who have no hope, then consequences do not matter. For those who have no hope, consequences do not matter. And I think hope is really a very, very critical part of anybody's future. When you hear of people burning down cities or doing all kinds of things that seem to be against their own self-interest, and you say, why? Well, it's because they've lost all hope. They don't see
Mm.
themselves as part of the community. They don't see themselves even living long enough to benefit from what's there. And that's why we really have to instill hope in our young people. We have to make sure that they see that they belong and that they are part of the construct that we're trying to build. Because otherwise, they're going to do things and you're going to say, why would they have done that? Well, it's because they have no hope for their future.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's kind of what I've centered on as far as like what does the work. I think it's kind of the hope building, tending to one's own hope, and sort of the skill portion of it would be, from what I've been reading myself, a bit about being able to envision meaningful goals, envisioning pathways, taking action towards traveling those pathways, being able to recreate pathways as obstacles arise. The our emotional well-being bucket being filled a little bit by accomplishment, the big filler of these emotion well-being buckets seems to be positive relationships, but um, a little bit from our own endeavors, I think that primes the pump kind of, or something along those lines, and then repeat, repeat, repeat. Sense of agency or willpower rises, and one way I've heard it put for that combination of goals thinking and pathways thinking is that you can think of that as way power, like you're able to envision what could be, and that the I think the general idea of hope maybe is something kind of different than that. I think the general version would be something like the future can be better, and with a little bit of hair splitting. Its cousin is optimism. I would say that's more like the future will be better.
Mm.
But I think there's something, that maybe someone has hope in that big sense that they believe that the future can be better, but maybe it's not during this life, and they have very little personal practical hope, in the here and now. Uh, or you could I also, I think there's the case where sometimes people have the other way. They're like, yeah, the world's not doing so hot, but I've got, I've got this sense of agency. I'm doing meaningful things, and it doesn't always radiate out into a way that connects with community betterment. But yeah, my hope is that people are able to find their way towards high practical hope and that big belief hope, like the future can be better. I think there's resonance between those two things, but uh I'm I really I think that's it it's it's reaffirming the trajectory that I've been trying to take with this project, that you mentioned things like what you said about the significance of hope, uh particularly the lack thereof. I think of the one of the motivation theories that I've heard is self-determination theory, and it hypothesizes that we all have psychological needs for relatedness, autonomy, and competence. I think for the autonomy, it's kind of like that, being able to formulate meaningful goals for ourselves, or having futuristic. We're probably naturally disposed to that. For competence, it would be something like the ability to create pathways, or strategic. And then I think it behooves us greatly to consider, as one of our values and some of our goals, pro-social values and goals in nature that help us to be able to develop skills to build friendships and thereby satisfy our need for relatedness. And so, kind of the big vision that I have would be that we're a world where everyone this is the minimally good world, not the best possible world. The minimally good world would be one where everyone's has their psychological needs satisfied for relatedness, autonomy, and competence. Or I would say has at least one good friend, and um, has the ability to build their own practical hope, and share those skills with others. There's
Yep.
my vision.
Nice.
But
Nice
yeah,
one.
enough about me. You're the guest. When you look into the future, what do you see? What would you like to see? What's on your horizon, to the extent, if you care to share about UNMC, or things that you're involved with the community. Where are things going with emotional intelligence workshops?
Well, I think maybe starting with UNMC, I see us continuing to be a source of inspiration to our communities that we serve, partners with the communities we serve. I see us as continuing to grow and help meet the workforce, healthcare workforce needs of the state. And I see us continuing to provide the highest quality of care for patients in the state of Nebraska, and also having researchers who produce landmark groundbreaking cures for different diseases, as they have been doing, as well as also helping to build companies that can help solve some of the most complicated healthcare problems that we have in our country. So I see a very, very optimistic and positive future for UNMC and Nebraska medicine. And I think my optimism is not based out of just imagination or just thinking. It's really based on our past and what's been happening over the last several years and how we've been growing and seeing these kinds of exciting discoveries happen right here on campus and the impact that we're having day to day. So I see, especially with our young people who get a lot of they get pummeled for not maybe as being ambitious or maybe not wanting to work as much. But when I look at the young people that we're training here today, I really am inspired because I really think they are as good as any generation. And they are just as motivated and just as ready to pull up their sleeves and solve problems. So I think from the point of view NMC, we're in really good shape. And I expect that to continue to be the same. From the point of view of empathy and emotional intelligence, I think we all have a responsibility. I have a bit more concern there because I think what's happening now with social media, AI, is that we are getting more segmented and getting more put in bubbles where we're not having the opportunity to engage with one another and speak to one another in a way that's respectful and meaningful. Everybody's in their own bubble and the bubbles never meet. So if you're in bubble A and somebody's in bubble B, you have totally separate and different worldviews and different perspectives. And you never really learn about what the other person's got to say or what to do. And that's really, unfortunately, helping to divide us as human beings and as a nation. And I really would like to continue to play my role in breaching that gap.
Do you see some of these things in motion within UNMC? Do other people like colors, strengths? Are there mentoring programs taking place within UNMC? What kinds of is there service learning or groups volunteering together? Are there service animals? Are there dogs,
So,
horses?
so yes to all of that. We don't have horses. We do have service dogs for some of our students. We have service learning organizations, several of them, who are out in the community either helping with refugees or helping with um, women who have been battered or foster kids, or maybe helping to work in the Douglas County Jail to screen for STDs. I mean, there's all kinds of service learning opportunities that we have right here in UNMC, and our students are right in it. They have a sharing clinic where the students are the ones caring for patients who don't have any health insurance or who are underinsured and making sure they get care under the supervision of qualified healthcare providers. So yes, service learning is a big deal here. Yes, we have mentoring programs for faculty, we have mentoring programs for students, and then we have mentoring programs for all of our staff. So those are all things that we're continuing to work on and build. Some are more developed than others, but they're all available to those who really seek them.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you might want to talk about?
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, Nick. It's been really great. I think there's been a lot of, you know, interesting, we've ranged from emotional intelligence to HBDI to Clifton strengths to hope to empathy. I mean, there's just a lot of topics we've covered here, and I think, I hope your listeners have found it interesting and engaging.
I hope so too. I blame it on curiosity from my VS strengths and maximizer from my Clifton strengths colluding.
Those are good ones. Those are really good ones.
I like them too. But if people would like to learn more, where would you send them?
Well, it depends on which of these. Obviously, if they want to learn more about UNMC, they can come to our website or reach out to us. For emotional intelligence, I would say there are a lot of tools available. One of the, I guess, best writers on emotional intelligence is Daniel Goleman, Goleman. and he's written a lot of books on emotional intelligence, almost all of which if not all of which I've read. Um, and then, in terms of Clifton's strengths, I'm sure you can point them in the right direction for that. And HBDI also is online. They could learn about that online.
Much appreciated. I look forward to future conversations. And if there's a workshop ever on emotional intelligence that might allow for a fly on the wall, or if you're giving
Hmm.
any annual or semesterly speeches or something along those lines, I'd love to hear your wisdom in action.
For sure, Nick. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, and I hope that this year unfolds beautifully for you and your family.
I hope the same for you and yours.